Hi everyone, welcome to episode 72 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar, thanks for listening. In this episode, I talked to Grant Nicholas from Feeder about their new album, Torpedo. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Simon Fowler and Oscar Harrison from Ocean Colour Scene about their upcoming acoustic tour. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at xsnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
In the review section this week, Laurie Gava has been listening to the new album from Johnny Marr, Fever Dreams, Parts 1 to 4. Laurie says Marr bobs and weaves from ballads to rockers effortlessly, as the double album format allows him to follow his muse. She says Ghoster is the standout track and gives the album 8 out of 10. There's gig news from Feeder, who play Belfast in June. Their new album's due out March 18th. And Diana Ross will play Dublin in July. Tickets are on sale from March the 14th. The excellently named King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard have announced they'll release an album later this year. 18-minute long lead single The Dripping Tap is streaming on the website now, as is the new single from Tess Parks. Brexit at Tiffany's is on Parks' album, which is due out in May. Finally, we've got an interview with Belfast-based band Winona Bleach ahead of their album release show on March the 24th. There's also a review of their debut album Moonsoak and ticket details at xsnoize.com.
Launching out of South Wales in 1992, Feeder have maintained an enviable forward motion by releasing 10 studio albums, over 40 EPs and singles, accumulating 26 top 40 chart singles, spending 185 weeks in the UK chart and shifting well over 2 million albums in the UK alone. In this interview, Grant Nicholas talks about the brand new album Torpedo, songwriting, upcoming shows and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Grant Nicholas from Feeder. Hi Grant, how's it going? Welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Hi there, how you doing?
Very good. Feeder are about to release the fantastic new album Torpedo. I read that you had songs written for Torpedo, then COVID hit and you had to write remotely. So how quickly did you adapt to the writing process through the pandemic when you and Taka were in different locations?
Well, we've kind of worked like this for a while anyway, because I mean, I a lot of bands sort of live in different different parts of the world, different parts of the country. So, I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of Tallulah was done this way anyway, because, we don't see each other all the time now. We're not both London based. So it didn't really affect the recording that much, apart from the fact that it was difficult to get into studios to do the real drums. I pretty much did everything here with my engineer, Tim, who co-produced it. And we pretty much did the last sort of 3 Feeder albums here, apart from the drums. Obviously, when we can get together and Taka's around, we often do the bass in the studio. Sometimes, Taka used to come here. But obviously, that didn't happen. But I was sending him tracks with some guide basses on, saying, listen to the vibe, see what you think. And then he was trying some basses at home. He's got a little Logic set up and then sending it back to me. And we were kind of editing it and reamping stuff. And it actually worked quite well. I think what was quite good, obviously it would have been lovely to be in a room together all the time, but records aren't always made like that anyway. That's when you're doing like the tracking and you get a nice chemistry, and then often you end up like replacing a lot of things unless you're going for a very live album. But it gave Taka a bit more time to work on bass parts. I could be getting on with other stuff. So obviously, it was a bit weird not to see each other for a long, long time. But because we've been working like this way for a while, it wasn't actually that bad, and it wasn't that different. It was just finding the drum rooms and when we could actually be in the studio and when we were allowed to do that was quite tricky. But as far as the songwriting goes, basically these songs actually I wrote pretty much sort of during the sort of lockdown period. The songs I think that you were talking about, we recorded, I think 12 songs before lockdown when we were doing a few festivals and in between tours. Those songs are going to be on the next album.
Oh, wow.
So it's all back to front. We thought about doing a double album, and then we thought, Umdenard. Then we want to do 3 mini albums, but we decided after people heard this record and they liked it, the team of people that will be working on it, to put this one out because it felt like a very complete record. And then the the sort of pre-COVID songs, as I call them, will be on the next album, and that's kind of connected to this. So it's kind of like a double album in two halves, if that makes any sense.
It's a follow-up to 2019's Tallulah, which you mentioned, which peaked at number 4 in the official UK albums chart. So Feeder have had 3 consecutive top 10 albums. So because of that, do you feel any pressure going into the recording of Torpedo?
Not really, because this album has just kind of just happened. I mean, I think that the album that would have been out now, which is the kind of, I suppose, the pre, the stuff like pre this, is probably a bit more of a natural follow-on from like Torpedo, from the Tallulah album. I hate using the word commercial because I don't even know what that means anymore. Because every time I've written stuff, I think it's really going to get on the radio. It doesn't get on the radio, and then I write something and I go, "It's on the radio." You can never second guess it. I mean, I was calling this. I know it's a bit of a weird term, but I was calling this to my manager and Jack. I was calling it our commercial suicide album because I thought, look, it's not an obvious daytime record. It's classic sort of 90s feeder. I kind of love making it, but you never quite know. But we've done really well. I mean, like the radio play. We're not a young Radio 1 band, but there's obviously only so many rock stations around. But we've had some really good sort of radio play on this, and it's done very well. Streaming probably as well as like Tallulah, if not better, actually, which is kind of bizarre. So we didn't really expect this album to even get on the radio. So it was an album that just sort of came during that difficult time. I got like very creative. I felt really focused. I wanted it to be like a rock album, back to almost touching on some early Feeder kind of sort of chemistry and sounds. And it just felt like, let's just put it out. We just do it ourselves. It's a fan-based record. It's an album that we just want to just have fun doing and get out there and play again live when we can. And and it's doing all right. So to answer your question, I didn't really feel any pressure at all because I didn't think it was even going to be one that we'd possibly go towards a chart or whatever. But now it's sort of starting to sort of get quite good feedback. I mean, the fan reaction's been amazing, and we've got some pretty good, radio playlists. So I'm feeling a bit of pressure now suddenly because I didn't know this was going to happen. But I'm not expecting this to be a big commercial record. If it does okay in the chart, then great. But we're doing it ourselves. It's a very small operation. So if it does well, then great. But I don't feel like I have to beat Tallulah because it's a different kind of record, Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a different. I think after the sort of like past 2 years, the whole music business, it's still a little bit unsure. Things are getting back to normal slowly, but I wouldn't say it's still got a long way to go. Like the live shows, people want to play live, and people want to come to see gigs, but tours aren't selling out like that. People are still a bit nervous about buying tickets. There's a backlog of tours that should have happened like 3 years ago that are still kind of happening now. So I think it's going to take the rest of this year to really settle down, and hopefully next year we'll get back to a bit more, normality. Touch wood that nothing else happens. we got wars happening now. It's a pretty scary time. So God knows what's happening with the world. But sorry, I'm just going off on one now.
We've got wars happening, and you're just putting out an album called Torpedo.
I know. I'm thinking, I know. And I'm thinking, guys, it's good timing. But, the whole title was, we wanted to come back with a rock album, a bit of a bang. It was a simple, like memorable title. And it was, it came from one of the songs. And hopefully people aren't going to look into it that much. I mean, music's, should be something to take your mind off things in the world sometimes. And hopefully, this album does that as well. But not perfect timing, but, oh well.
It's a very uplifting record, and as you said, it's one of your heaviest records yet, which is weird, considering the circumstances which it was recorded during a pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I would say. I mean, I think people, a lot of people don't know the history of Feeder. I'm sure we've done. I mean, going back to Polythene and Swim, we've always been a rock band. We've always had songs that kind of have just managed to get on radio and sort of connected with people because I naturally write. I'm into choruses, and I quite like anthemic choruses, and I love heavy, but I also love songs. And most of the songs, 95% at least of all the Feeder songs I've written on acoustic guitar, and that's how they start out as very simple acoustic tracks. Some end up being a lot more riffy and a lot more rock, but we've always had that heavy side to us. And I think people that don't know that, really don't know the band's history because we've had quite a few pretty heavy albums over the years. I mean, like Renegades, is pretty heavy. All Bright Electric, which was our first album back after the break. That's sort of not a million miles away from this record. Obviously, Polythene had some big rock elements. Even like Tallulah had some, there was a couple of rocking tracks on that album as well. So it's kind of what we do as a band, but we like to make each album a bit different, and and that happens in a very natural way. I think you can never second guess what the album's going to be just because of what's going on around you. I think that obviously there's songs on this record that, of course, touch on the whole situation we were in, and mental health, and just kind of what everyone was dealing with, just to sort of get their head around the whole situation. But I think the songs still have a very sort of universal message in them as well. And I think if the pandemic hadn't happened, I think these songs would still have a place, and it's what each person gets from a song, when they hear it, when they hear the lyrics. Certain people have a certain image in their mind, or it takes them back to a certain place, or it helps them with something they're going through. And that can be a combination of the lyrics and the melody, say, as well as the band music, and I think that's what I love about, being in a band and writing songs, because everyone has their own interpretation of that song, But yeah, sometimes you write, you can be in a sad mood and write the most uplifting record ever. Talk to any songwriter or band, or, it's very hard. It's not a 9 to 5 thing. Things just come. I do think that maybe some of the influence from this record, certainly from my point of view as a writing, it was, I think it was a combination of maybe the frustration of not being able to play live, brought a bit of rock to it. Maybe I had time to think about Feeder's sort of history a little bit more, and, revisited a few of our earlier works. Maybe that had a bit of influence. And also on the last tour, when we were playing some of the heavier stuff in the set amongst some of the more obvious singles, there was just a real spark in the band. I looked over at Taka, and he was just really enjoying rocking out. And I think I had a little bit of that, thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have a few more songs that kind of do that. And I think that's partly, maybe that brought a bit of rock to it as well, but, in a very natural way.
Early tracks from the album have already been out. Torpedo, Magpie, Wall of Silence, and The Healing. They've been released, and as you said, they went down really well with fans. But back in the day, they would have been released as physical singles with B-sides. How have you adapted to the new way of releasing your music via streaming platforms?
Well, we were quite late with the whole Spotify streaming thing. I know there's been a lot of, I know the artist thing isn't great on Spotify, but at the end of the day, I want people to hear our music. So, I'm sort of, I'm on the fence with that a little bit, but it's, it's just a different world now. I mean, we're not writing any less. I mean, I'm probably writing more than I did back in the early days. I mean, every time you released a single back in the 90s with us, because I was always writing songs, and we were quite lucky. Every single release was almost like an album, because, we do 2 or 3 formats by the time you did those B-sides. And, we set a really quite high bar for ourselves, and trying to give something, like really, really special to the fans. I mean, I remember being 6 o'clock in the morning, lying on my back in the studio, because we had to do, 4 B-sides by the next day. That was the deadline. So I literally wrote them the day before, turned to the studio, playing them to John and Taka, saying, look, I've got this song, let's just throw it down. And it would be recorded. And I remember, literally having to write some of the lyrics just on the floor, thinking, how am I going to sing this? It's like 5 a.m. But it was great. And, they weren't all like that, but we just loved that whole process. And, we did a lot of B-sides, which is why we've got so many songs. I mean, I was amazed. Some have a real vibe to them, the fact we did them like that. And some, we had a bit more time. But I mean, we can still do that now. That hasn't changed. I think Feeder still have a big part of our audience and our fan base that, that are also a very mixed age group. Even some of the young kids are getting into physical stuff, especially vinyl. They still sort of, they still ask me now, saying, God, I wish you'd do the EPs again with all the B-sides on and stuff like that. But, we're thinking maybe that's the future, because I think albums now, it's getting tricky, because I think for a band like us, been going for almost 30 years, we've got such a catalogue of music. And I think with these next few albums coming along, I'm thinking, maybe we'll just keep doing EPs and just do EPs from now on. Who knows?
CDs are making a resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, the physical thing, it's so important for us. I mean, just, a lot of thought. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person to say this. Maybe it's, it's my age, and just kind of what I love about what made me want to be in a band. It was just seeing those album covers and that whole kind of side A, side B, seeing who produced it, and you know what I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. To me, like an album is, it's like even the album sleeves are art, and I love that process. And I think for me, I always want to be that kind of band. Whether we sell 10,000 records or whatever it is, I don't care. I know if it's 500 records, we don't put any less thought or time into it, and it's so important. And for as long as we can do the physical thing, we're going to keep doing that, because I think our fan base expects it as well.
Yeah.
We're even doing cassettes still. We've been doing them for years, and people buy them.
Yeah. Now, I don't have a cassette player. I have a CD player. I'm more of a CD man, to be honest.
I still got a CD in my car, because everyone asked me to go, so I can't believe you're still burning CDs off. I said, there's something about, I'm checking like demos and rough mixes and stuff. I just love that process. And it's just, I just still kind of miss that, I still use cassettes.
Wow. Is that a Sony Walkman?
This is what I do my little vocal warm-ups on. And this is what I usually have for writing. I mean, now I use my iPhone.
Wow.
But I used to put down, I've literally found a box of cassettes in my studio that I've kept the songs and ideas, and me just singing in little bits, even from back, probably even, going way back, that I've completely forgotten about. So,
Wow.
if I ever get that sort of dry period, I'll see what I can find on there. Yeah. But, I think it's, it has changed, but I think the physical is making a little bit of a comeback. And I think that, obviously vinyl's doing well. And, I think a certain like generations still like the physical. And I think some young kids see it as being something a bit different, something like quite collectible and quite special now,
Yeah.
So I hope that continues.
So do I. Let's talk about some of the songs off Torpedo.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
My absolute fave song on the album is Slow Strings. So what can you tell me about writing that song?
I'm really pleased that you picked that, because I was umming and ahhing where to put that on the record at one point. I always loved it. I wrote that quite early on. It's quite a dark track, but it was one of those songs where I knew it wasn't like a big bang song, but it felt like the album just really needed something like that. So yeah, it's quite popular, that track. Actually, I wasn't sure how people would relate to it, but certainly when I've been playing it to our live band, our guitar player Tommy, he loves that track. So yeah. So that's a good choice. Interesting choice, in fact, actually, because, people normally, I think you're the first person I've done an interview that's actually mentioned that one. So yeah, I'm quite pleased. Thank you. I mean, it's a relationship song. I mean, that song touches on the whole relationship, that whole journey, It's sort of, it's got that kind of bittersweet thing, but I think it touches on life and what everyone goes through in any relationship at some point. I suppose it's, analyzing things, I mean, that's the easiest way that I can explain it, really. I mean, what did you get from it? When you heard it, is that where you were getting from it?
It's just the feel of the song. I'm not really a lyric person until I really like it, and then I'll delve in to see what it means. Yeah. It's just I just love the feel of the song. I was sitting, putting this together, and just listening to the album, and it just really struck me.
Yeah, well, I had that. I mean, I actually wrote that on acoustic, and then one of those songs where the actual main guitar part is I'm obviously known for playing Fender Jazz Masters, and it's that classic sound that I love. It's the front pickup on my Jazz Master, a real lo-fi, graty sound. And when I was sort of putting it down first, just with a drum machine with my engineer, that guitar sound had such a character to it. That's what's on the record. We just tidied it up a little bit, but it was really raw. And I was going for almost like a kind of like Nirvana in Utero approach to it, keeping the guitar like just a real character sound. And as soon as that was on there, it was just a nice song to do. But it was so tempting to make it go heavy earlier. It's just nice the fact you have to wait for it, and then it does eventually kick in. But yeah, it's I mean, I really like that song, and it gives you a bit of a break from the sort of relentless first half, but it's still got a rock element to it. I'm quite looking forward to seeing how we do that one live, because you could twist it a bit, you could do it. It's quite an experimental track, yeah. But it sort of touches on sort of relationships and also like growing old together. That's why I mentioned the kind of, I had this sort of image of the kind of aging tattoo as you get older. It's sort of just, it's just got lots of little references in it, but and the kind of, it was a really fun song to record that one. It's definitely one of my favourite on the album as well.
Yeah, and also Submission. It's an absolute belter.
Oh wow!
I love the guitars on that.
Yeah, I mean that was really. I think I grew up listening to a lot of sort of 70s. Sort of 70s rock and a lot of acoustic stuff, and anything from Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, and you can hear the influence. It's got I had that real kind of vibe in my head. I wanted something that was a rock anthemic song, very feeder, but without being overly heavy for the sake of it. So I mean, like the main guitar part in that song is actually played on my acoustic guitar, and then we built around that. So even if you take all that off, it works really well as an acoustic song. So I can imagine. Maybe not the chorus, but I can imagine sort of the 70s band doing that song, It was, that was a real, when I came up with that verse, it definitely had something, and it was one I just had to record. But it's a slightly different, it shows the more anthemic side of Feeder, but it's not overly, I could have put more on it and made it heavier, but it didn't feel like it needed to be that. I wanted the album to have some diversity and to, you can still rock without putting 50 guitars on it.
Yeah,
it's just hard not to put the guitars on sometimes, because obviously it's nice to to be in the studio and doing all that. But it's really and I really enjoyed recording that one. I mean, actually, you picked two of the songs I think I probably enjoyed most actually recording.
Which song on the album means the most to you?
Oh, it's a really difficult one. I mean, Wait. I think the Submission is definitely up there. I really like Magpie because it's kind of old school, but there's just something about it. It's heavy, but the vocal's not a screamy kind of rock vocal, and I kind of really like the way it still sounds powerful, but it's not it's not as cliched as maybe it could have been. I like the fact that the voice is a 2-part thing, and it's kind of got that slightly crooner, sort of crooner style that I do sometimes. I mean, I really like that, but just because that song reminds me of, because I at the time when I was writing a lot of these lyrics, I was going, as everyone was doing during lockdown, going for walks, just trying to keep yourself together. I do a lot of running, and so I was like, listening to demos and sort of writing stuff as I was running a bit. And that song was really written from walks and daily runs down to Finsbury Park. So that has a bit of a soft spot for me, because it kind of reminds me of just this area, where I live, North London. So I mean, I don't have favourites on different days. It's hard to pick one really. I think if you're a fan and you wanted to, and you like the band and you like what we do, I would say The Healing's probably a good track, because it's got quite a lot of like classic Feeder elements in there. You know what I mean? It's got the kind of it's very song based, but it goes off on this kind of almost like rock opera bit in the middle. It gets really heavy, and it sort of goes back to our early 90s kind of sound. And that was quite a challenge to record that song, because it's got various tempo changes. It's very long. I think it's one of the longest songs we've ever recorded. But it's come out at a really good time. I know The Healing and the lyrics, you might seem a bit obvious now as we're coming through this sort of out of the whole kind of the whole COVID thing, but it just seems to have hit at a really good time. I never knew this song would be out and what would happen, how long it's going for, but I think this is just the actual timing for that song has been quite good for us. Timing is really important with music, because you never quite know. Sometimes a band can write a great album, but it's just not the right climate for it. For some reason, guitar bands just aren't really getting much coverage or whatever. We've had some albums that have been maybe not done as well as we hope, because it just hasn't been the right time for them. And sometimes it's about that, with music. It's really, but I think people have missed a bit of rock, and it seems a good time for, for guitar bands. I still wish there was more on the radio, but there's definitely some great bands out there, young, and there's a few bands that, like us, and not so many, that are still doing it.
Yourself, music comes in cycles, and there's some great stuff coming out there.
Yeah, there is, and there's a real. Even my kids, my son's 14, and say my daughter's 16, almost 17, and they're really, especially my son. He's really suddenly got into some really cool stuff. I didn't even know what he's listening to. So he's like discovered Radiohead, and he's discovered like Nirvana. He's really into Hole, and he's got into rock suddenly, and I mean it's great. So a few of his friends go, "Oh yeah, another your dad's band." My parents, so I think there's odd days where I'm quite cool sometimes, but otherwise I'm just dad at home. But it's, but yeah, no, I think it's a good time for not. I think I hear a lot of '90s, not just rock, but a lot of indie influences and a lot of sort of young bands I've heard recently, and I think that's really encouraging. And it's good for us as well because people will sort of realise we've been doing that kind of stuff for a long time, and we're still doing it, and we're still surviving. So yeah, I think it feels like a good time for guitar bands. It feels like a good time for bands like ourselves if they're still around.
Well, hopefully loads of kids picked up guitars over lockdown.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people picked up loads of new hobbies or instruments, or started painting or cooking or doing fitness or all sorts. I mean, it's opened up a lot of things for people, and some people have really changed their lifestyle and even changed their careers. It's been I think in some way, for some people, it's been a really good thing as far as they've kind of done something, maybe they've always dreamed of doing and never done it, and this has given them a chance to do it. Some people have had more time with their kids and family who are maybe working, who are away from home a lot. So there has been some positives that come out of it. And I think it's made a lot of people realise, obviously myself included, that some things just aren't that important, I think people have appreciated things that actually do really mean something to them. But it has been a really difficult time now. I mean, it's been bizarre. I still can't. Some days I still find it hard to get my head around the whole thing. Yeah. And then we've got other things happening in the world now with the whole thing. There's always something. But I never thought the pandemic would happen like it did for that period of time. In my lifetime, I just didn't.
And I'm the same. It was all a bit scary.
It's all a bit scary. And I'm not, I'm still a little bit, I do actually finally, I don't know how you feel, but certainly the last few months, I feel a little bit more, I think it feels like it's going to sort of come back to normality. We just have to live with this. And that feels really good. I didn't feel like that for a long time. It's only just, I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm just hoping now that, anything else doesn't sort of like come along.
well, I did feel like that, but then all of a sudden, looks like what could possibly have World War III in our backyard. So that
I know that's even more scary. Just thinking, oh my God. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, it is very scary, and I just can't believe after what's happened in the world the last few years, this is now happening. It's just like it doesn't matter how much we dream for a perfect world and harmony, and writing songs like The Healing. It's never really going to happen because there's just too many bad people out there, or crazy people. But I'd like to think that God, who knows? But hopefully it's going to, there'll be some sort of like solution for it, or it's going to come to an end because it's a pretty, it's just a horrible time to be happening.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, but you know what? We still got music, so that's that's sort of that's a little bit of a switch off from what's going on in the world sometimes. I know it sounds like I'm not trying to close my eyes to problems and issues, but the music can be a really healing thing and quite a comforting thing sometimes, and that's why I love listening to music. Sometimes it just gives you a chance to switch off, doesn't it?
Well, that brings me on to my next question. I've always wondered, feeling a moment. It's often used as a triumphant soundtrack, the moments of celebration, such as cup finals. But lyrically, it's a deeply personal, emotive song. Is there a pride in knowing that people view it as being so uplifting, or do you ever wish that people would listen to it and understand the deeper meaning behind the lyrics?
No, not really, because I think it's up to anyone to, I don't like talking about lyrics too much because I feel as though sometimes, people might think, I didn't really mean that to me. I don't want to make it too, obviously I have to talk about it a bit in interviews, but I'm always a bit uncomfortable with it sometimes because I feel like I want people to really get their own message from it. But I mean, that song, it's a similar thing. I mean, that was almost a part two to Just the One Feeling That song. To me, it's a continuation and similar theme. And it's uplifting as a lot of the songs are, but lyrically, it's quite dark. But I think it's the combination of the way, that we do things in the studio, our chemistry as a band, and just like the way that I naturally write. I like that kind of, it's almost a positive, negative thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's always a ray of hope, even though it might seem quite, and it might be that kind of feeling of hope and lift is is in the like dynamic and in the actual melody of the song as well as the lyrics. And I think it doesn't worry me, no, because I think it's up to the listener to get what they get from it. But it is strange that, if you listen to the lyrics, even just the one feeling that has been used as well on quite a lot of things, they're quite dark, but some people go, oh yeah, it's all great. They're all celebrating and stuff like that. It gets used a lot on football. It's been used on, Master Chef. It's been used on so many things, on adverts. And, that's probably one, people talk about, the obvious few indie pop hits we've had, like Rosin Just a Day, but actually Fleeting Moments is being used on probably actually the most sync, actually. Of any Feeder song, I would say.
It really annoyed me because I didn't know it was Feeder, and I used to hear it everywhere. And I used to go, that's fucking amazing tune. And it was always on TV or something like that, and I just didn't know it was you.
I think a lot of people know. It's so funny because that's been the case of not just that song, but that's been the way for most of our career. It's just bizarre. I think because we've been on small labels and we've always sort of done our thing. Obviously, we've done arenas and stuff but we've always been kind of there, and we never got to U2 levels, but we've always been at a nice level making music we want. But a lot of people know our music, but don't know it's us necessarily. Even now, I go, I know that song. I didn't know that was. It is bizarre, even after almost 30 years of being in a band.
But you know what? This is before Shazam, so I couldn't Shazam it. So I kept on hearing, and I didn't know what it was called to try and find it or get it or what album it was on.
Yeah, it was on Pushing Senses, but it was, that was our follow up. That was an album I felt a bit of pressure because obviously just Comfort and Sound was a really big record for us. I mean, that was our biggest selling album, apart from the singles and the best of albums, and it was it really crossed over even more than Echo Park, that it was just a really massive record, and I think opened up sort of Feeder to a much wider audience. And when we did Pushing the Senses, I did feel a bit of pressure thinking, oh god, we got to follow up to that one. And Comfort and Sound, I didn't know what was going on. After we lost John, that album was just somehow I just wrote these songs and we decided to carry on, and it was a massive record for us. Hand on heart, I didn't know what was going to happen with Feeder after John died, and that album just ignited the spark. And so I probably felt the most pressure writing Pushing the Senses. I think just to try to follow on from the success of of Comfort and Sound, but it did pretty well. I mean, it wasn't our heaviest record, but commercially it did very well. And as you said, like Feeling a Moment. It's been used a lot, and it still gets used a lot.
Yeah, brilliant song, brilliant.
Yeah, it gets used a lot on sport. They use it a lot on sport. I've heard a couple of really bad library copies of it. They've just changed a few chords, and it's like, oh no. It's like every band gets that because using the libraries is probably a bit cheaper for them to use, but it's a shame. Yeah, but yeah, no, it does get used. I think it's just one of those songs. It just does a certain thing.
Well, Feeder take to the road on a big headline UK tour this spring. So how much are you looking forward to getting out and performing the album on the road?
I can't wait. It's, I'm obviously a bit nervous about playing again live. We did a few festivals at the end of last year, but we haven't really done much at all. So, you can't, there's only so much you can do at home, practicing. So I'm really looking forward to going out and playing this record because it is a real return to sort of, it's going to be a pretty rocking set, I think. And we're hoping to sort of revisit, like the odd song from Swim and Polythene, which we don't play so much, which I know will excite some of our diehard old school fans. I'm not quite sure about how the newer fans will get it, but look, they put some rock on this, and it's had a good response. Otherwise, it's going to just be a best of tour every time we go out. And this is a new album tour. We're not dissing any of our old stuff. We're always going to play those songs at some point. And festivals is when you come to see Feeder do all the hits and stuff. So yeah, of course we'll throw a few classics in there as well, but it's going to be focusing on the new record, going back and playing a few old little Feeder gems that feel like they fit this record. Stuff from Swim and Polythene that we don't play very often. They haven't played for years, so they're going to feel quite new and fresh. And yeah, and then we'll see what happens. But and if we feel like the other song needs a few more well-known songs in it, we'll tweak the set as we go along. But I do want to be brave on this. And I also want to give people something new because otherwise some bands just do the same set every tour. And that's not what we want to do. And I feel as though we just want to, enjoy this new record. So So that's the plan. We don't quite know. We haven't even started rehearsing yet. I've got my first 2 gigs next week. Actually, we're doing the revive. We're doing to save save our venues. 2 gigs, which 2 tiny gigs we're doing next week, Friday and Saturday, which I'm really looking forward to. But that will probably be a bit more of a mixture of a set. I don't know if we might do 1 or 2 new songs if we can get them together in time. We've only got 2 days of rehearsal. And then it'll be, obviously album week, which will be chaos. We're doing a lot of install signings and a few like acoustic performance gigs, and then it'll just be into rehearsals, try and get ready for the tour.
When you get the tour itinerary, is there a city or a venue you always look to see if it's there because you enjoy playing there so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a few. I mean, I love Barrowlands in Scotland. It's just an iconic venue. Obviously, Brixton Academy. Rock City in Nottingham. I mean, we've had some great gigs, obviously say at the Limelight as well. I know it's, I know it's not one of the biggest venues, but we've had some great nights in there. We love playing Belfast. Always great audiences, obviously, we've always had a good fan base there, and they definitely like their guitar bands there. They, definitely like a bit of rock. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a few really. I'm just trying to think. I mean, definitely Barrowlands is one that I always get excited about still. Obviously Brixton Academy. Obviously, there's some great London venues like Roundhouse is always fun to play. There's so many. It's hard to pick them. It's hard to pick them really. I mean, I like some of the smaller venues as well. I kind of really miss some of those early days when we were starting out. You get a real vibe in a small venue. I think that's why the Limelight's quite good, because it's not tiny, but it still feels it feels like quite intimate.
Yeah.
It's a bit more. It feels a bit more like a punk rock gig.
Yeah, no, it's a great venue.
Yeah. So yeah, looking forward to. Hopefully we are going to be coming. I know there's no Belfast on this first day, but we are coming back. And I didn't tell you that.
Oh, good.
Definitely coming back. Oh yeah, we did try to get one in for this, but as you can imagine, when venues start to get booked again, everyone's trying to play. So most of the venues were booked up, or they were booked up from 2 years ago, and now they're doing them. So it was very difficult to even get any tour dates in for this first leg. So places that have been missed out, we will come back, whether it's a festival gig or maybe we might do a second leg to the tour if things settle down. So yeah, but we will definitely be coming back to Belfast. I promise you that.
The band, the Feeder, have been together for nearly 30 years now. Looking back over your time in Feeder, what has been your highlights?
Oh God, that's a tough one. I mean, just obvious things like, obviously getting a record deal was a massive thing. It's so hard now being in a band. There's so much. It's so easy. It's easier to be in a band now, and it's easier to make records because you can make records that, same as you. Technology is so good now. You can sort of do them at home, and you can make records in your bedroom. In the old days, it was all a bit more, big studios, a bit more expensive. But I think the highlights for me have been, first of all, obviously getting signed after a lot of hard work. Being a British indie rock or alternative band when the Britpop thing was happening didn't quite fit that whole thing, but we kept on chipping away, built the fan base, finally got a record deal, obviously made our first record, and then I think doing Reading Festival main stage, I think it was 96 or 97 when we pulled a really big audience, and we were just a little 3-piece band, and everyone was like, who are this band? And it was just an amazing, I just felt like, hey, we're starting to get somewhere, working our way up from some tiny little stage to the Dr. Martin tent to the main stage at Reading. It was a massive thing. And in the 90s, Reading was a proper rock festival. That was a real turning point in our career. I think just every time I hear, like a Feeder song on the radio, it's still a nice thing to have. I remember the first time we heard, I think it was High on getting some really good rotation, not only here but in America when we were touring. That was quite surreal. Hearing our single in America in different states when we were touring around, touring with bands like Everclear and stuff like that. It was a really great time. But that was definitely a highlight. Supporting like some really great bands was a highlight for me as well. Being on the same, supporting people, anyone from U2 to the Rolling Stones, been on tour with so many bands. We did we've done festivals with Foo Fighters and Queens of Stone Age. We've been on tour with Coldplay. We've done some amazing things. There's so many highlights. It's very difficult to pick. But that's definitely a few that spring to mind.
Did you ever get the Bono talk? I
met Bono, and we did meet them. What the Bono talk? What's that one?
He's sort of quite renowned for giving young bands who's supporting you two a bit of, advice about the business.
No, I didn't get the advice thing. I mean, I think I would have. Basically, we did this. First of all, it was on the Vertigo tour we did, and it was basically quite a few big bands or bands who were doing okay at the time. So basically, so we did the Vertigo tour, and I think Ash did a few dates because we did I think it was us and Ash, and I think Snow Patrol were out doing some as well, Franz Ferdinand, I think. But anyway, I did meet Bono there when we did this gig. It was in Europe, I can't remember where it was. I think it might be Germany, and it literally was like we thought this gig's going to get pulled. It was just like heavy storms and rain. Anyway, we were told no, it's all going ahead. I remember covering all our pedal boards in all this stuff to try and see if we could even play. And I remember coming off stage, and this was the first time we met them, and they all came in, the entourage, like Bono and I think the wives and stuff. And he came into our little dressing room. We were soaking wet, and we looked like drowned rats. And when Bono said to me, "Oh God," he said, "Fair play, guys. Did a great job to go and play in this weather and all that." And he said, and I said, "Yeah, I was just trying not to fall over." And he says, "I'll tell you a little trick." And he said, "I put skateboard like grip tape that you put on the board to stop you slipping." He said he puts on the bottom of his shoes when it's a wet stage and it starts in. That's what Bono told me. It's quite surreal. So I was talking to Bono about putting grip tape on the bottom of my shoes. Well, that's apparently what he did. But I didn't have the full career talk. But some years later, we did some charity event that I know that Bono's wife was very involved with. I can't remember the name of it. And we did a gig in Dublin. We were really well looked after, and they asked us to come and play. Apparently, they liked the band and they liked Just the Way I'm Feeling. So we went and performed that. And at the after show party, I went back, and then I thought, maybe they aren't going to turn up. So I left a bit earlier. As soon as I leave, like Bono comes. So I missed my big moment. And he spoke to Mark Richardson, our drummer at the time, and said how much he liked Just the Way I'm Feeling. And I was like, I can't believe I left the party. So maybe that would have been the time where Bono gave me the big speech, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, sorry, as I'm waffling on, but that's a true story, and those things don't happen very often in life, But yeah, I mean, U2, they're a band that have been around since I was at school, and sometimes they get a hard time with certain people, but you know what? They've written some great tunes, and they're a great live band, and I've got a lot of respect for them, and there's not many bands with a catalogue of songs that they've got,
Octung Baby's my favourite album of all time.
That's a great album. I bought the album since it came out, and I love the production on that. I think it was Flood they worked with on that one. It's a great record. U2 make some great songs, and they had a bit of a hard time for a while. And some people, I know there's a bit of politics and all that stuff, but I think they're a great band, and they were, we really enjoyed playing with them, and we work with their audience as well because we're obviously much heavier than U2, but there's not, we're not that different, sort of musically in some ways. They're a very song-based band. They've got some great choruses. The Edge is such an influential guitar player. His sound is very distinctive. People say, "Oh, it's just delay pedals," but you try and do what he does well. He was, he's quite unique. I think they're a great band, and I would never put them down. And there's not many bands who've been around that long and managed to still do it and do it well. So I'm not. I've got a lot of respect for U2. I'm happy to work with them anytime if they want me to do some co-writing.
Well, disregarding the new album, if you were to recommend one of your albums to someone who's never heard Feeder before, what album would you choose to start with?
Oh, that's a tough one. Comfort and Sound, I think, is a really good. I think it's probably. Every band sort of has that album, but there was, I suppose, their one that was the one that everyone remembers. So I'd say that's our, the sort of Feeder Holy Grail album, I suppose, in some way, as they call them. Every band has one. But I'd also as much as I would, when I hear it, I think, oh God, I wouldn't sing like that now. Or I wouldn't have written that. I still think Polythene has something because that's how we started. It was a really important record for us. It's a classic 90s record. It shows it's sort of everything on there. You can see where it could go as a band. And I think, hopefully now talking to you 25 years later or whatever, it's still the same journey and it's still got elements of that record, but we do it in different ways, Mm-hmm. So if I had to recommend one, I would say Comfort and Sound, but I also would love people to hear our earlier works just so they understand like the kind of heavier side of Feeder as well. But it's difficult. It's difficult to say with albums. I mean, once we finish recording them, I spend so much time on them. Unless I'm trying to remember how to play something or I've like forgotten a lyric or whatever, I don't really listen to them much because I listen to them so much, like during the recording and mixing process. I've kind of and then you move on. It's quite strange, like making records.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you come back, I think during lockdown I came back. I know Taco, our bass player, was posting a few old videos and of us playing like Reading and stuff like that, and it brought back a lot of memories. And it made me I did go back and listen to a couple of our earlier songs that I'd forgotten about, and I realised, God, these songs would go really well with the new, with this new record. So that's why I think we decided that we might sort of revisit a few of those on the tour. But yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a long answer. But yeah, Comfort and Sound, Polythene. I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, it's hard to say really. I think if you wanted an album that is a really good all rounder, I would say like Tallulah, our previous album, has a bit of everything on it as well. It has a bit of rock. It's got the indie sort of bouncy side of Feeder, and there's a few epic-y kind of ballady songs on there as well. So that would be a good starting point as well. Okay, yeah. I'll stop there.
Just a few more questions. I always like to ask my guests the following questions. Out of all the albums in your collection, who do you have the most records by?
What, you mean like other artists?
Yeah.
Good one, actually. I mean, I'd say Led Zeppelin. Definitely Led Zeppelin. Yeah, I would say Zeppelin probably. I'd say that's probably one I got the most of. Just because, I don't know, it's just one of those ones I started sort of like collecting when I was younger. Yeah, maybe Tom Petty as well. But I think Zeppelin probably the most. Are you surprised by that?
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, I've got a lot of I've got a lot of U2 stuff as well. Really? Over the years, yeah, I do have a lot of U2. So I say it's pretty close. Just because, I bought their early works, when I was at school. So, it's quite bizarre to be listening to a band when you're really young at school and then be touring with them. It's so surreal.
Yeah, it must have been mad.
It was, but those bands, they've aged really well. And even their music, I mean, they can still do it and not look, it's not, some bands when you get old, you just know you can't physically do it or it just doesn't work. But with their music is kind of, they can still do it and they can still pull it off. I mean, Bono's still got a great voice and stuff. You don't always, maintain that when you get older. So, how long they can do that stuff for, I don't know. But they certainly they certainly seem to be able to do it.
You might surprise me with this next one, Grant.
Yeah.
Which song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, God. You mean most of my easy listening thing? I mean, I do love a bit of 80s like classic rock.
Good eye.
Raised on Radio Journey. That brings back a lot of memories growing up. I'm a big Boston fan. I love classic rock as well. But I like a lot of really easy listening stuff like sort of Joni Mitchell, even Carpenters. Like Carpenters, I know people might love that. They were great. The Carpenters. They remind me of sort of growing up. ABBA.
Everybody always says ABBA.
I mean, because it reminds me of being a kid. My dad used to play ABBA in the car. When he's driving around in his old Rover, and it was like, I think one of the first albums I remember having at home or buying was like ABBA Arrival with a helicopter on the front. But a lot of really easy listening stuff. Things like that. Carpenters. Simon and Garfunkel as well.
Oh, I love that. I wouldn't say they were a guilty pleasure.
No, but some people think they're really so lightweight. But songwriting's amazing on that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just great songwriting. But I think Carpenters, some people like Carpenters, but she had an amazing voice. You know, she was a good little drummer as well. She played drums. She was like, you know, they were a talented, they were a talented family. But yeah, definitely those are a few. I mean, I do like a bit of classic 80s rock. You know, if you go to somebody's party and they're playing all this, it's great to hear some really good hip hop and stuff like that. You know, you obviously really appreciate that sort of stuff. But, you know, when you put just a classic tune on from the sort of late 70s, 80s, there was good songwriting around in those days. You know, it gets a hard time in the 80s, but there was some great songwriting.
No, it's my favourite era for music because it was just so eclectic. You listen to the radio and you just didn't know what was going to come on. Where now, a lot of the stuff sounds the same, especially the pop stuff.
Yeah, the 80s has been very influential for a lot of artists. You know, there's a lot of very cool bands that, you know, wouldn't be doing what they do if it wasn't for that period of music, you know. So, there you go. That's my guilty pleasures.
So what's next in the immediate future for Feeder?
We got the Torpedo Tour in April, May. Obviously, we're going to do some festivals. The festival lineups, most of them are rollover lineups from 2 years ago. So some of the festivals were full before we even tried to get on them. So we're going to just do a few low-key ones this year and hopefully hit hard next year with some festivals again. The plan is to release another album in a year's time, which will be the other songs I talked about if all goes well, which is quite a fast turnaround. And then who knows? You know, we just want to carry on making music for as long as we can and keep playing live for as long as we can physically do it. And, you know, we don't want to outstay our welcome as a band. You know, I think it's a time where we feel like maybe it's time to stop, but I don't know when that will be because I'm still kind of enjoying it. And, you know, and I'm really looking forward to going out and playing live, which is great. So, yeah, that's our plans, really. And obviously to get back to Belfast, to hopefully go back to Japan. I'd love to go back to the States sometimes as well, if that ever happens. But, yeah, I mean, you know, we're going to just do what we do, really. And, I'll just keep writing the tunes.
Yeah, thank God for that. I'll certainly keep an eye out for the Belfast gig whenever it's coming up.
Because, you know, you always get, you know, we're not even doing like a Welsh date on this when we couldn't get the right venue. And I'm from Wales originally, and everyone was like, I can't believe you're not doing Wales. I was like, dude, I couldn't get the venue. There wasn't the right places. You know, we will be back.
Yeah.
But we did a few gigs in Wales in last year. At the end of last year, we did some gigs with Catfish and the Bottlemen. And one of these Revive gigs we're doing next week is in Wales. So we are doing that. We're going back to Wales to play with. We're opening up for Noel Gallagher and the High Flying Birds as well. So we are doing a few dates. So hopefully that will keep everyone happy.
Okay. Well, Grant, that's my questions finished. I wish you all the best with the album. I'm really, really loving it.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. Well, hopefully I'll see you in Belfast.
Yes, absolutely. I will be there.
All right. Well, you take care.
Yeah, you too, mate. Have a good night.
Thanks a lot. All right. Cheers.
Bye, Grant.
I'm going to go put some Carpenters on. See ya.
Cheers, mate.